Chapter 9 Gettysburg It was in many respects exactly the same and yet completely different. He had been in more skirmishes and he had killed more men. He had had men die next to him, but he had not been in another major battle. Now he was at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on top of a gradually sloping hill, looking down at what seemed to be the entire Southern army assembling to attack. What was the same was the meadow. There was always a forest and always a meadow. In this case, the forest where the rebels were assembling was over a mile away and well below the Union army. In between was a large meadow, a mile or more wide. The rebels would have to leave the trees and walk, under constant fire from artillery, across the meadow and up the incline to the fences and rock walls where the Union soldiers waited. What was different about this battle was that Charlie was above the Rebs, in a sheltered position, with all the guns in the world behind him. It was a warm day, and he sipped some water from his canteen and checked his rifle. He had taken a new one from a dead man after his own had been destroyed. This rifle had a tendency to foil its nipple, so he carried a small needle stuck in his shirt to clean the hole if it plugged. He did so now and put a fresh cap on the nipple, then tightened his shoelaces in case he had to run. That was always in his mind, either run at them or run away. He did not want to stumble. He peeked through the rock wall again and saw the Confederate artillery wheeling their cannon into place. The Rebs would try to prepare the hill with artillery before their charge, and as Charlie looked, the first batteries began firing. Soon they were all hammering away. It was the worst barrage Charlie had undergone. Shells burst overhead and killed men and horses and destroyed some Union artillery and rear positions. But it could have been far worse. The line of Union troops waiting to take the Confederate attacks were at the brow of the hill, which dropped away to their rear as well. The rebel artillery was massed and firing heavily, but rounds aimed at the top of the hill that went even slightly high just passed over and exploded down the backside. Casualties were not as heavy as all the noise and smoke indicated. When shooting tapered off and the rebels started moving their massed troops across the meadow and up the hill, the Union artillery wheeled into position and tore into them with exploding rounds, chain and grape shot. The Confederates had to march through a storm of fire, and Charlie lay and watched them and nearly felt sorry for them. They were so brave, he thought, or foolish. They kept coming, even though when thousands of them were down and dying. The cannon ripped through them to pieces, wiping them out before they were even within rifle range, slaughtering them like sheep as they marched in even rows. Sometimes whole rows were dropped where they stood, so the dead lay in orderly lines, and still they came on. At first it all seemed so distant, as if it was a staged tableau. Men marched, then they spun and fell, exploding red bursts into the air. But as they came closer, and Charlie could see what an artillery was doing to them, tearing, gutting, blowing apart, he could not believe that anyone could continue against the fire. Yet they came on, and close enough now so that those not hit could return fire, and Charlie could hear their bullets hitting the rocks in front of him, and he thought, so this is what it's like to be safe, to fight from a good position. All right, up men, the sergeant roused them. Ready to fire. Shoot low, take their legs out. Present, aim, fire. Charlie raised, aimed, and fired in less than 2 seconds. He did not know if he hit, did not care. He reloaded behind the wall, rose, aimed, fired, and thought, this is the way it should be done. The bullets over his head sounded like a storm, but they were all high, and he kept reloading and firing as the remaining Rebs screamed and started to run at the wall. Up men, bayonets, take them. Charlie did not think any of the rebels would reach the line, but they came on. Torn and bleeding and many in rags, they yelled and came with bayonets, and for a moment it seemed they would carry it, win the hill, win the battle against impossible odds. But a colonel saw the danger and ordered the only unit still in relative shelter, the 1st Minnesota Volunteers, to make a countercharge. They rose and went as one man, Charlie among them, screaming their own yells. They tore down the hill at the rebel unit storming up the hill, and the two bodies of the men collided in a smash of steel and powder. Standing toe-to-toe, hacking and shooting at each other, neither climbing over the bodies of friends to hit enemies. Charlie in the middle, jabbing and screaming until he was hit, and hit again, spun and knocked down, and he saw the red veil come down over his eyes, and knew that at last he was right. At last he was done. At last he was dead.